Imagine this, 37 Vogue covers. Versace, Dior, Calvin Klein. Every designer wanted her. Janice Dickinson didn't just walk into the spotlight. She declared herself the world's first supermodel. But Janice's real story? It was never about the glamour.
It's about incest, sex, drugs, rock and roll, Studio 54, fashion, thrival.
Addiction, scandals, public explosions that made headlines for all the wrong reasons. The same woman who shattered fashion's blonde standard in the 70s would become one of its most notorious cautionary tales. Even Janice herself would look back and call it the darkest story of the supermodel era. So what really happened to the model who claimed to invent it all? And why does her story still feel like one of fashion's greatest tragedies? Janice Dickinson was born in Brooklyn in 1955, but grew up in Hollywood, Florida. On paper, it sounded sunny. In reality, it was a childhood marked by violence. In her memoir, No Lifeguard on Duty, she described a father who terrorized the family, abusing her sisters and beating her when she resisted.
It was terrible growing up, with a lot of physical abuse.
Catholic school didn't help. The nuns punished her constantly, and even a ballet teacher hit her for speaking out. Janice would later say she felt like she was learning to survive long before she ever learned to pose. By her teens, she was already different from what the modeling world wanted. Tall, dark-haired, flat-chested, what she called an ironing board with legs. Agencies dismissed her. Eileen Ford told her she was too ethnic to ever succeed.
And I went into her office and she said, "You'll never make it in this industry."
But rejection only sharpened her drive. She trained in karate, swimming, yoga, anything that gave her a sense of power. And she carried that same determination into modeling. If you want to succeed in anything, you have to believe in yourself, she later said. Still, the rejections kept piling up.
Going after appointment after appointment after appointment, doors slamming in my face. No one wanted to take my picture. No one wanted to give me work.
However, her first break came when Wilhelmina Cooper signed her. Paris followed soon after, where designers embraced what New York had rejected. Janice's look wasn't too much. It was exactly what made her stand out. By the late 1970s, she was booking covers, walking shows, and making thousands a day. The girl who had been told she would never belong was suddenly one of the most visible faces in fashion. When Janice came back from Paris in the late 70s, she wasn't the girl begging agencies for a chance anymore. She was already a name. By 1980, you couldn't escape her. 30-plus Vogue covers, Harper's Bazaar, Elle, Marie Claire. She was walking for Versace, Valentino, Calvin Klein, Oscar de la Renta, and she was making thousands a day, sums that made even other models stare. But Janice didn't just want to be booked. She wanted to be remembered. She started calling herself the world's first supermodel. Was it true? No. The word had existed long before her. But it was the kind of line only Janice could deliver with a straight face. And the thing is, it worked. The press ran with it. Suddenly, she wasn't just modeling the clothes. She was becoming a celebrity in her own right. Of course, not everyone bought it. Other models rolled their eyes. Agents called it typical Janice, bold, dramatic, a little delusional. But that was exactly her power. She didn't need permission. She declared herself the first, and for a while, people believed her. It was peak Janice. Ambitious, brash, impossible to ignore. But beneath the covers and campaigns, the cracks were already forming. The industry was fast, the parties even faster, and Janice was right in the middle of all of it. The supermodel era had found its loudest voice. And she was about to show the cost of living at full speed. Success had made Janice Dickinson rich and famous, but it also dropped her into a lifestyle that rewarded excess. In New York, drugs and alcohol were everywhere. In limousines, backstage, at every party. Janice admitted she resisted at first, but after a bad breakup, she spiraled. Cocaine, alcohol, anything to numb the feeling that she wasn't good enough. Her memoir doesn't hold back. She described nights of drinking until she blacked out and a car accident in St. Bart's where she nearly passed away behind the wheel. It wasn't just her body at risk. Her reputation started to crumble. She was photographed, stumbling out of clubs, and her high-profile relationships became constant tabloid fodder. In 1994, when her daughter Savannah was born, media speculation swirled around her affair with Sylvester Stallone, with many assuming he was the father. The relationship crumbled when DNA tests proved otherwise. Janice leaned into her image as fashion's wild card. She bragged about sleeping with hundreds of men, maybe more than 1,000. To some, it was empowerment. To others, another scandal. What no one could miss was that her personal life was always louder than her work. The same woman who had been making thousands a day on the runway was now as famous for chaos as for beauty. By the 1990s, Janice's name meant scandal as much as it meant supermodel. But what happens when a reputation like that collides with reality television, where every fight, every meltdown, every scandal is broadcast to the world? By the early 2000s, Janice Dickinson wasn't the runway queen she had been in the 80s. But she had something the industry still couldn't ignore: a reputation. She was outspoken, unpredictable, and willing to say what others wouldn't. And that made her perfect for television. Tyra Banks brought her onto America's Next Top Model in 2003, expecting Janice to toughen up young contestants. What the show got was something else. Janice tore into them on national television, their weight, their skin, their personalities. She called herself the Simon Cowell of fashion, and audiences loved it. But behind the scenes, her volatility was harder to contain. By the fourth cycle, Tyra replaced her. Janice later said she was devastated. She thought she was saving the girls from harsher rejection in the real industry, but the producers thought she was simply too much. Still, Janice wasn't about to fade quietly. In 2006, she launched the Janice Dickinson Modeling Agency. The show was chaos from start to finish. Screaming matches, walkouts, public breakdowns. It ran for 4 seasons, less about building models than about watching Janice unravel on camera. After that came Celebrity Rehab, Big Brother UK, even walk-on cameos in scripted TV. If there was a spotlight, Janice would step into it, even if it meant being remembered more for her meltdowns than her modeling. Janice's television years showed the same paradox that had defined her modeling career. On one hand, she was magnetic, the judge who said what others wouldn't, the agency boss who made good TV by refusing to play it safe. On the other hand, it came at a cost. The more outrageous she became, the less people remembered the groundbreaking model she once was. Reality television cemented Janice's reputation as entertainment, not elegance. She had wanted to be remembered as the first supermodel, the one who broke barriers in the 70s and 80s. Instead, a new generation knew her only as the volatile TV character who screamed, fought, and unraveled on camera. When asked years later what the biggest misconception about her really was, Janice didn't hesitate.
That I'm mean from America's Next Top Model, that I'm nasty and mean and I put people down, and I don't.
To her, the sharp comments and on-air confrontations were a way of telling the truth. But to audiences, they became the whole story. And that shift left an open question. Was Janice Dickinson exposing the truth about an industry that chewed girls up? Or was she simply playing into the chaos it created? By the early 2000s, Janice Dickinson's life had become a series of brutal headlines. In 2013, she filed for bankruptcy, admitting to over $1 million in unpaid taxes and cosmetic surgery bills. For a woman who had once been among the highest-paid models in the world, the contrast was stark. The same press that once announced her record-breaking day rates now reported on her debt. Janice's name, once linked to Versace and Dior, had become shorthand for excess, chaos, and decline. But the most defining moment of this period wasn't about money. It was about truth. In 2014, Janice publicly accused comedian Bill Cosby of drugging and assaulting her back in 1982. She said she had tried to publish the story in her 2002 memoir, No Lifeguard on Duty, but was pressured by lawyers, hers and his, to cut the chapter. "I wanted to include it," she told reporters years later, "but I was threatened. I was told there would be consequences." Speaking up decades later made her one of the first well-known women to accuse Cosby, and it shifted the narrative around her entirely. To some, she was finally telling the truth she had been silenced from publishing. To others, her messy public image made her an unreliable witness. That divide, the constant tension between her credibility and her chaos, became the perfect symbol of how the industry and the public treated women like Janice. They loved her beauty, but struggled to believe her pain. It wasn't just another scandal. For Janice, it was the darkest story of her era, one that blurred the line between personal trauma and public spectacle. It showed how much she had carried in silence, and how hard it was to be taken seriously after decades of being branded as too much. Then, in 2016, came another blow. Janice announced she had been diagnosed with breast cancer. "It's something I didn't expect," she said at the time, describing how she found a lump during a doctor's visit. After 6 weeks of radiation treatment, she was declared cancer-free. But the experience left her shaken. This time, her headlines weren't about scandal or excess. They were about survival. She began urging women to get regular checkups, telling audiences, "Don't wait, go, get tested. It could save your life." For once, her voice wasn't entertainment. It wasn't outrage, it was human. And in those rare moments, Janice Dickinson reminded the world that beneath the scandals and meltdowns was someone who had been fighting her whole life, first for recognition, then for survival, and finally, for the right to be believed. After her cancer fight in 2016, Janice Dickinson's life shifted in ways few expected. That same year, she married psychiatrist Robert "Rocky" Gurner, the man she often describes as her anchor after decades of chaos. For someone whose love life had filled gossip columns for years, it marked a kind of stability she had never really known. But stability didn't mean silence. Janice stayed on television and in the press. She entered Celebrity Big Brother UK, sparred with housemates on camera, and turned interviews into mini-performances. British morning shows, American talk shows, podcasts. She never missed a chance to remind the world that she wasn't finished. Even in her 60s, she was still making headlines. The focus, though, often wasn't on her words. It was her face, her body. Janice admitted openly to facelifts, Botox, and surgeries, but the coverage was relentless. Tabloids dissected her appearance with the same cruelty agencies had shown her decades earlier. For Janice, it was proof that fashion and media hadn't changed. They still consumed women. Only now the spectacle was aging instead of youth. Yet beneath the scrutiny, Janice kept her edge. At 70, she speaks about aging, addiction, and survival, with the same blunt force she once used to talk about cocaine and couture. She hasn't softened. She hasn't cleaned up her story. She refuses to. And that's the contradiction that defines her in 2025. Janice Dickinson broke barriers, but she also broke herself. She was a trailblazer and a tabloid obsession. She named herself the first supermodel and, in the same breath, lived out the darkest scandal of the supermodel era. So where does that leave her? With a legacy as messy as the life that built it. And the question we're left with isn't just about Janice Dickinson, it's about us. Was she ever truly celebrated for what she changed in fashion? Or have we only ever remembered her for the chaos that followed?